morning guys from Gare Seine in Paris, the coach station, which is basically in that hole there. Believe me, it's like the pits of hell once you go through there. If you thought London Victoria was bad, you should check this place out. But yeah, what appears to happen is all the coaches go through there and then they take people off to their various destinations. And I shall be heading back to London Victoria this morning on the 10:30 Flixbus service. It takes about 9 hours or so via the English Channel and P&O Ferries. Well, that's what it says on the timetable anyway. Although we're just coming at the back end of Storm Kieran now, so there has been some disruption on the channel, and I'm not sure if the ferries are still going to be delayed or what the traffic's going to be like either. But come with me, we're sure to find out, aren't we? So yeah, we'll get on board and I'll catch you on the coach. Gare Seine is a truly horrible coach station. I had heard this prior to arriving, but seeing really is believing, isn't it? Initially I'd walked down from Gare du Nord, stopping off at one of the various boulangeries en route to stock up on supplies. And it's only about a 10 to 15 minutes walk this, and after making my way through the park, I arrived at the main entrance. Yes, this is the main entrance, just behind some kind of exercise area, which looked to be frequented by people smoking weed, numerous beggars and other assorted dodgy looking characters. I went inside the coach station where there is absolutely nothing to do apart from hang around waiting for your coach. There are a few vending machines, departure screens, ticket office, and that's about it. It really is the worst coach station I've ever been in, by a long way. Now walking up and down, if you dare, you will notice that it's mainly Flixbus and BlaBlaCar coaches using the area, and they're leaving for places all over Europe, Brussels, Amsterdam, etc. That is one thing about the place, the connectivity is great, and yeah, you should be able to make it to most major towns and cities in France and further afield if you manage to get onto the coach without being mugged. Now fortunately I didn't have to wait here long, and my coach, a VDL Futura FA693WR, was waiting on stand 5. As expected, there were ticket and passport checks prior to boarding. Thanks, sir. All large luggage went in the hold, and my rucksack was coming with me, and it just about fitted into the overhead rack. First impressions were, yeah, pretty good actually. The coach looked fairly new. It was clean, and the interior looked bright and spacious, although granted it was difficult to see that much in the gloom of the underground coach station. And there didn't seem to be too many people on it, probably 60% capacity I would say, if that. So yeah, I stood a decent chance of getting 2 seats to myself. Well, I did have to move someone who was sitting in my seat, and he was part of a larger family, 2 of which were sitting behind me. But yeah, because there was plenty of space, he was able to sit behind them, giving him and me an empty adjacent seat. Sensible and beneficial for both of us. We reversed off stand only 2 minutes late, though it then took a further 10 minutes waiting at the exit barrier before leaving the confines of the coach station at 10:42, according to the Flixbus app.
Aujourd'hui, vous êtes bien à bord du bus qui va à Londres. Comment ça va se passer déjà? Pour votre confort, au niveau du car, vous avez des toilettes au niveau de la porte arrière. You have a toilet in the back door.
Initially, we headed southeast along the banks of the Seine. There were 2 crew members on board, and worth noting actually that on this journey anyway, announcements were made mainly in French, with just the odd occasional English sentence thrown in here and there.
Nous avons 3 heures de trajet jusqu'à Calais avant la pause, sinon enfin entre la pause et nous avons 3 heures de trajet en tout. You have 3 hours driving to Calais.
We were soon heading along the Boulevard Périphérique, crossing over the massive railway tracks that head back into the Gare de Lyon. Just a quick note on how I got here. Well, originally I was supposed to be taking a BlaBlaCar coach, but with less than 12 hours to go, they decided to cancel my daytime journey from London and put me on an overnight coach instead. And that is totally unacceptable, and not just because of the amended journey times, but because of the knock-on effect of my hotel booking in Paris, etc. I won't be booking with BlaBlaCar again because I just can't trust them to stick to their timetables and not cancel any services. But I had to catch a flight here in the end, which was fine. Well, about £10 by train from Charles de Gaulle, and I stayed at the hotel terminus directly opposite the Gare de Lyon for about £70. Total bargain location wise, and I would definitely recommend them if you're looking for accommodation right in the centre of Paris. I'll pop a link to their website in the description below. Our leaving Paris was fairly busy, as expected, on the A16, with this being a real express service, in so much as the coach doesn't stop anywhere, just the ports. It didn't really matter what time we arrived in London, and what I mean by that is, well, we could just as well be as early as late, depending on traffic, weather, sea state, ferry timings, and anything else that was thrown our way. After about 45 minutes, we were passing underneath the runways at Charles de Gaulle Airport, and were making good progress north. Lots of lorries about on what was now the A1 auto route, and I think this is the main Paris, Calais, Lille, Brussels road, so not surprising really, I suppose. It was quite a nice day outside and I was settling into the journey nicely. And then, after driving for just an hour and 20 minutes, we decided to stop at the Aire de Ressons Est services for a 15-minute break. Right then guys, just pulled over for a rest. We've been on the road, well, about an hour and 20 minutes really, so not long is it before they stopped. Not bad though. The traffic's moving reasonably well once we got outside of Paris, and the coach is fairly comfortable. I tell you what, it doesn't half help, doesn't it, that you've got a seat next to you that's free. So I'm able to spread out a bit, which is really good. A nice comfortable ride, so enjoying it so far, and the weather's good too, isn't it? No idea when we're going to get to Calais yet, but we'll see how it goes. There's no rush, is there? Just got to take it as it comes today. I'll catch you in a bit. Okay, back on the coach and back on the auto route. The 15 minutes actually turned into 30 minutes by the time the drivers finally showed up. I get why they say 15 minutes though, because you can guarantee there will always be someone who gets back on the coach late. So let's have a look at the seat, and I like the styling with the brown pattern moquette, light brown piping and black headrest. The VDL badge here added a nice touch. At the back and lower cushioned area were firm without feeling uncomfortable. There are armrests, but just on the aisle side only. And legroom I thought was excellent, and no footrests here, but I'm not too bothered about that. There was power underneath the seats in front, one European 2-pin socket that worked, and 2 USB sockets which didn't work. No pouches on the seat backs, although they did have flip down tables which were pretty standard with their cup holders in situ, grab handles and coat hooks above. There were lap belts at each seat. The front ones had 3-point harnesses, and a recline lever was present and worked. There were curtains at the windows. Above your head were individual air vents, reading lights, not working but they may have been switched off, stop request and call buttons. Overhead storage on both sides was just about large enough to squeeze my 40-litre bag in, just. Trolley cases would need to go in the hold. And up front there was a digital clock showing the wrong time and a TV screen which was switched off. We passed signs for the Battle of the Somme. There are lots of these brown signs in France, and there are a lot of rest areas, airs too. Just east of Arras, we turn off the A1 onto the A26. Arras is another name all too familiar with the battles of World War I, and there are lots of war graves amongst the fields, all too easy to see from the elevated position on the coach. And through the toll barriers, Péage de Sète, we were about 25 miles away from Calais at this point. It looks like there'd been some flooding in the area, judging by the amount of standing water in the fields. Whilst it was still daylight, I took the opportunity to go and have a look at the toilet, which was actually the worst toilet I've ever seen on a coach. And never mind there being no water, there was no tap, no soap or hand sanitizer, no toilet roll either. It was so bad, actually, I did wonder whether the crew had announced in French that it wasn't working when we left Paris. If anybody can figure out what they were saying at the start, then please let me know. It certainly looked like it was out of order, and we did have a rest break pretty early on in the trip. Maybe that was why. Either way though, it should be fixed, simple as. And if it is out of order, just put a sign on the door. Returning to my seat, I checked out the Wi-Fi, which was okay. It connected quickly, but quickly dropped out if you weren't using it. And when it did work, it was good enough for social media scrolling and checking emails. It wouldn't stream videos, but yeah, it was reasonable for most needs. Okay, so these tall security fences running the length of the road on both sides can mean only one thing. That's right, we were approaching Calais. 3 hours and 48 minutes it took to get here and start the procedure for going through passport control, etc. I'm not totally sure what happens, but yeah, I think the Flixbus crew member firstly gives passenger details to the check-in staff, as we were then able to display a tag on the front windscreen with the details on. We then went through to another checkpoint where the barrier lifted, so I'm assuming all was okay, and then we made our way to passport control. We all got off the coach and went through French passport control first, who exit stamped our passports. And then we had to go through to the UK Border Force side, where I was questioned by a very nice elderly gentleman about my 18-hour visit to France. After all that, we were allowed back on the coach. You know, I'm sure this was a lot less hassle a few years back. I wonder what made it worse. Anyway, time for the most exciting part of the journey, in my opinion anyway, the Channel crossing, and we were due to board the 1350 sailing with P&O Ferries MV P&O Pioneer. It's always exciting driving onto a ferry, isn't it? And this was no exception. A little bit of a queue to start with, but we eventually ended up on deck 5, and the Flixbus crew member gave us instructions as to our location and when we needed to be back on the coach ready for departure at the other end.
Ça va, votre attention s'il vous plaît. Je vais vous demander de tous descendre. Je vais fermer, nous allons fermer le bus à clé. Les choses à retenir, c'est que nous sommes au deck 5. Deck 5. Donc c'est ici qu'il faudra se retrouver. La traversée durera à peu près 1h45 à 2h. Voire un peu plus, 2h30, grand max. Donc voilà, si vous pensez être perdu, revenez juste au deck 5 et voilà, on se trouve au deck 5. We are on the deck 5. Deck 5. The crossing will be about 1 hour 45, 2 hours. After this, come back to the deck 5. Deck 5. Thank you.
We all disembarked the coach, which was right next to the stairs handily, and I made my way up to deck 8, where my first experience of P&O Ferries was to head for a door which didn't work. A bit like boarding not boarding, isn't it this? I'm going to call it exiting not exiting. Anyway, I eventually found a way out, and yeah, just had a bit of a wander outside before we left. Right guys, outside deck space on the P&O Pioneer. First impressions? Not that great, to be honest. I went up to deck 8, the coach is parked down on deck 5 by the way. And yeah, and the one side of the doors to the outside deck wouldn't open. So you had to come in back inside and use the outside doors for deck 8. Not much on there. Then come up to deck 9. The same thing happens on deck 9. And then this is about as far as you can go, because if you look down here, it's like kind of barriered off. There looks like some kind of posh lounge in there. So obviously this deck area here is for the exclusive use of people who've paid more money. That's my suspicion anyway. If you know a bit about this boat, then ship I should say, before I get loads of angry comments. If you know a bit more about this ship, then please let me know in the comments below. I'm going to do a little bit of an explore around, but there's not that much to see at the moment. Crossing estimated to be between 1 hour 45 and 2 hours, so we'll see how it goes. And yeah, I'll catch you a little bit later. Yeah, so I stayed on deck 9 for a bit and had a look in the quiet lounge, which is an area of additional and quite comfy seating. And on the other side of the ship at this level is the kitchen, which looked like it served kind of cafeteria style food. And much of deck 9 is taken up by the commercial drivers area, and I was very kindly granted access by P&O to go and have a look around. I'd never been in this part of the ship before, so I was intrigued by not just what was available, but also how much everything cost in comparison to what us, the general public, normally pay. Well, one part of the driver's lounge was taken up by sleeping pod furniture, which I would imagine is very useful if you need an hour or so's rest before continuing your journey. There are comfortable airline-style seats here, and there is access to some separate outside deck space, which was mainly used as a smoking area from what I could see. Okay, and we are off. So I'm outside on the commercial driver's deck now, which is very quiet. It's not a bad day, is it really, out here? So yeah, I'm going to enjoy the crossing, and I'll see you on the other side. Right, so yeah, I went into the commercial driver's lounge because I've always been fascinated about how much they pay for stuff, and I've come back out to the normal passengers cafe thing, and yeah, just an example there for you. In the commercial driver's lounge, full English breakfast, £5.99. It's not bad, is it? That £5.99. Come out here, some kind of breakfast box, as they call it, £9.99. So there you go. The MV P&O Pioneer is the company's latest addition to the fleet and plows the Dover-Calais route along with the Spirit of France and the Spirit of Britain. A maiden voyage was only a few months before this video, actually, on the 19th of June 2023. And it has the usual food and drink outlets on board, a well-stocked shop, a bar, etc., along with a dedicated pet owners area and an exclusive club lounge. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because, yeah, travelling on this ship was just one part of a larger journey that I was making today. But it's worth pointing out that, unlike the other two conventional ferries in service on this route, this vessel has a double-ended hull design with two bridges. Nothing new in itself there, but yeah, this is the first double-ended ferry to be used in the English Channel, and the obvious advantage is not having to turn the ship around when docking or departing. The capacity is 1,500 passengers with 2,800 metres of deck space for commercial vehicles and 800 metres for cars. So freight is obviously a big consideration on this route, isn't it, when you look at these figures. I stayed on deck for most of the crossing with a coffee that I just about managed to hold on to. Yeah, the wind was definitely blowing up the channel from the west, and the closer we got to Dover, the worse the weather conditions became. But I was enjoying it nevertheless. I mean, there's nothing like being out on deck at sea, is there? Right guys, the white cliffs of Dover behind me are not looking very white today, are they? Really more of a kind of a damp, dull, grey kind of colour. Matches the colour of the sky as well, doesn't it? But yeah, we're not too far right now. Oh, I think it's, you know what, I think it got rougher the closer we got to Dover. And it still looks a little bit choppy now. Not too bad though, and I'm assuming we can just go straight into port. Although I have been told that in these kind of conditions, or worse than this probably, then the ferries can sort of hang around outside the harbour wall, waiting to berth inside. But well, I guess we'll see what happens now, won't we? But yeah, it's getting pretty dark now, so we'll watch it, and I'll catch you in a bit. Yeah, so approaching Dover in the gloom here. Well, it's still a great sight though, isn't it? With the lights on the harbour wall glowing to welcome all ships headed for safety in the calmer waters inside. Now, one other vessel moored up at this time, which was one of the DFDS ferries, as you can see here. And at this point we were called to return to our vehicles, which for us meant congregating back down on deck 5 and waiting for the Flixbus crew to appear. Well, that was lucky, wasn't it? Right inside the bus. Perfect. Right then guys, and back on the coach, just waiting to disembark the ship now in Dover, and it looks like we are moving. Yeah, not bad crossing really. A little bit rough, but I've had a lot worse than that, as you've probably seen. So yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take us now to get to London Victoria, but we'll get there when we get there, won't we? Catch you in a bit. 78.5 miles from Dover to Victoria coach station, according to Google Maps, the way we were going anyway. And as we emerged from the ship, yeah, needless to say, the weather was absolutely terrible. Heavy rain, gusty winds. And we were just waved through the port though. All formalities had already been completed back in Calais. So it was a fairly quick exit through the maze of ramps by the cliffs, and we were out. Proper darkness now, so not a lot to show you unfortunately, but as we made our way up the A2 towards the M2, we hit our first queue of traffic since leaving Paris. Now, what a surprise. Not a massive hold up though in the end, the worst was yet to come. So after the M2 we were back on the A2, routing into central London via the Blackwall Tunnel. According to Google Maps again, this stretch after the tunnel was going to take nearly an hour. Yeah, at this point I began thinking about the overall journey, and the time it took obviously, and the passenger experience. And like I said earlier, the starting point in Paris for the capital of France is an absolute disgrace. And it feels like coach passengers are considered a very low priority, when in reality it is for some people the only affordable way to travel. I paid £29.99 for my ticket, plus £1.99 to reserve a seat, and a further £1 booking fee. And I'll tell you what, you would do really well to get between these two major European capital cities, with luggage don't forget, for less than that. A flying would be far more expensive when you factor in getting to and from the airport from the city centres and the luggage costs involved. Now, the other obvious comparison is the much faster Eurostar, but yeah, then that's going to cost you twice as much minimum. For some people that's not an option. Now, for me, I love the fact that we crossed the channel on the ferry. Yeah, the tunnel is a bit quicker, and I believe blah blah car coaches go that way, but it's far less interesting in my opinion. And the ferry breaks the journey up, which makes a big difference when you're looking at 9 hours plus on a coach. And it also gives you the opportunity to have something to eat, just relax, and stock up on supplies for the last part of the journey. And the coach itself was comfortable. Okay, the toilet was totally unacceptable, and that needs to be addressed. But yeah, most of the equipment worked, and it certainly helped having an empty adjacent seat, didn't it? The driver and his assistant were professional throughout. Their driving was to a very good standard, I thought, and they were helpful when called upon, lending power chargers to people, for example. And actually, for once, I'm going to also give a big shout out to the passengers on this trip. Mainly French, I would say. They were considerate, punctual, and polite. So would I do it again? Probably not. As much as I did enjoy it, I'd prefer to pay the extra money and take the Eurostar. But like I said, for some people that's not an option, is it? We finally arrived into London Victoria coach station about an hour late. Along with everybody else, I disembarked via the middle steps, and before heading off to Victoria railway station, I just took a minute or two to sum up the journey. Right guys, London Victoria coach station, around about 10 hours that was. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Would you take the coach all the way from the centre of Paris to the centre of London? There are easier ways to do it, isn't there? But yeah, this was cheap, and it was a bit of an adventure as well, wasn't it? Which is why I did it. I'm getting a train now to Woking, believe it or not. So yeah, another leg, final leg. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you on another adventure soon. As always, guys, cheers for now.
AS.